94.3 The Dude is very grateful to our men and women in uniform. We're proud to recognize local members of our military by turning the spotlight on them right now in our Soldier Salute.
I'm your host, United States Marine Corps veteran Ethan Stitch Gardner, and on today's Soldier Salute, I have recipient of 2 Purple Hearts and state lead for the Fallen Outdoors, retired Staff Sergeant Brandon Bryan. Staff Sergeant, thanks so much for being here. Thank you so much for your service. Tell me a little bit about your story and your road to the United States Army.
Well, first off, thanks for having me in here today. Born and raised down in Saluda, South Carolina. Grew up, sports and outdoors was my thing. Played baseball up into college at North Greenville University. Parents wouldn't allow me to join the military when I was at 17, so they told me I had to take one of my scholarships and chase that opportunity through college. Realized I was 18 years old and joined the Army. They were not too happy at first. Went from there out to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Became a combat engineer. Good times and some cold days through that winter out there. Finished up basic training, got stationed March 2008 in Fort Carson, Colorado. Went on my first deployment to Afghanistan, we started in Iraq, then moved over to Afghanistan. Biggest move from combat zone to combat zone for any unit since World War II. We get there, we start ripping in with the unit that's in Iraq, currently in Baghdad City, where we're going to be pulling route clearance missions, clear the roadways for coalition forces and ourselves and the civilian populace that was there in country. We get told to meet up at the basketball courts about 2 months into this deployment. We're just now getting started, learning how to cruise these routes and find the enemy and their IEDs, improvised explosive devices, otherwise known as roadside bombs. We show up on the basketball court and our colonel tells us, pack your stuff, we're to leave a couple weeks to go to southern Afghanistan. We'll be the first route clearance to ever clear routes in southern Afghanistan. Pretty tough. So we got all our stuff, packed it up, literally had our trucks on C-17, Air Force cargo planes, hit the routes and started learning what Afghanistan was really about. And I'll tell you now, it was not the same monster that Iraq was. Afghanistan was definitely a different monster and something coming into that we were not prepared for. There's a lot of troops in contact, firefights, pretty much just getting shot at because we were slow moving target as route clearance. We're riding 5-10 miles an hour down the road, searching for things that go boom. And they just like to take quick pop shots, and we didn't even have time to fire back. We just keep on rolling. Yeah. Came home from that deployment, got hit multiple times on that deployment by IEDs, but eventually we got back home. I started getting ready to PCS to Fort Stewart, Georgia. It was funny when we got there because actually it was me and a handful of other NCOs. We get there and I'm looking around and we have 8 of us. Just a handful of NCOs, a couple specialists. We got one Sergeant First Class as the acting first sergeant. We get in there, like, where's all the privates at? This is the 530th Clearance Company. You guys are standing up a new company. Oh. Next thing you know, we got like 2 or 3 bus loads of privates coming in straight from MEPS out of basic training. Trying to mentor them, get deployment orders. We got deployment orders to go to Afghanistan in less than a year with 150 new privates straight out of basic training. We go down range, get orders to go back to the exact same place I was in 2009 and 10 to Afghanistan. So I'm all puckered up, thinking, here it goes again, and we got all these brand new guys. Nobody's been trained up. We get out there, went back to the same exact spot. We weren't finding anything, so they moved us down to Spinboldak, Afghanistan, which is about 5 clicks from the Pakistan border. A lot of products and stuff that they were using in IEDs, pressure plates and stuff were coming across the border through a couple passes that were not the main route with the check station at the border. We take these dudes down range though and find upwards of 65 plus IEDs, didn't lose a single person. And that, doing route clearance, is impressive. If you can go down there and look for IEDs, be walking around dismounted multiple clicks a day, walking in front of a convoy with a mine detector, finding IEDs. I mean, me and my dismount team, we accounted for more than 12 just in our platoon alone. My driver, or my Husky driver that drives a single-man truck that looks for the roadside bombs out front, found over 30 IEDs. So I can sit here and talk about myself all day, but it sounds cliche, but there's no I in team.
But they also wouldn't have been able to do that without the mentoring that you had taught them from your first deployment. I mean, you had already been there, done this. You knew what was at stake. You knew what the threat was. And you were teaching 150 new privates the things that you had learned on the first deployment.
Like I say, I don't want to sit here and talk about myself, but I just found an example the other day. I can pull it up right there on my phone. One of my privates, Aaron Perez. Guys, we get down there. He's 10 years older than me, maybe 15 years older than me. He's a private, brand new to the Army, E2, pushing probably late 30s. And I get a message on Facebook not even 3 weeks ago. Hey, Staff Sergeant Bryan, I just want to tell you, thanks for taking care of me, and thanks for, making sure that we stayed taken care of, mentored, and it really molded me to, pretty much being, and, I hope your family's doing well. And it's stuff like that. That's the reason you do it.
So you come home from that deployment.
Yeah.
You get stationed in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
Yeah, man. Hawaii was rough. All those white sand, pretty beaches and stuff, I couldn't. It's the worst thing to wake up to in the morning. Yeah, went out there, got stationed with 66 Engineer Company. They had won the Ishner Award multiple times for Best Engineer Company in the United States Army. Tons of everybody I talked to, just tons of history and lineage behind the unit, and it was in 2nd Brigade, 25th Infantry Division, so we were actually in an infantry battalion as a single engineer sapper company. Got out there, had the award, had the chance to attend sapper school, got to go ahead, went to air assault school, rappel master school, and it was a nice break from deployments. Even though I went out there thinking I was going to deploy, that's the reason I initially went there, was to go there to deploy, got orders canceled, and I was able to finally slow down from a year off deployment, year on deployment, year off deployment, year on deployment, spending the first 5 years more downrange essentially than being stateside. It was nice to finally take some time for myself and, get some career progression going as far as schools and such. It was nothing like being in Hawaii. Once I got to go to rappel master school, just going out, I'd get tasked out like every other month to go down to the rappel tower, kick some dudes off the tower, kick some dudes out of some helicopters.
You get scared going up on those things.
Oh, dude, let me tell you now, 42 foot. All right, 40, I think, or 39. Is he a 39 or 42 foot tower? But I'm going to tell you now, I was a rappel master. The guy sitting in the middle of the helicopter kicking people out the left and right of the door, and a 40-foot tower was the most humbling. I couldn't show it, but I was scared to death every time I went off of it. I'm not gonna lie to you, but I don't care what nobody says. When you're standing on a 40-foot tower and all you got to hook to is a rope, I'm gonna tell you now, if it wasn't for all my soldiers watching, you would not even get me up that tower at this point. I don't care.
Couldn't catch me up there.
But then I could go down a rope at 120 foot, no problem, out of a helicopter. Yeah. I thought it was easier doing that just because it was, fun.
Heights aren't my favorite thing either, but I'll get up there and do them.
The best example I ever heard with the heights thing is, I'm not afraid of heights, but I respect heights. I know if I fall off that tower, the result is not going to be good.
Oh, yeah. So,
not really afraid of them, just respect them.
You started having some issues from being blown up a couple times from IEDs. You went into medical, and they decided that they were going to medically retire you.
Yeah, I had just, like I say, I had just gotten orders to report to Fort Carson, Colorado again. I was going to be moving from Hawaii to Colorado, and was at the doctor's, and essentially my doctor decided that it would be better for me to retire and come back home to South Carolina, that it would be a better idea for me to do that than to stay in. And I was torn. Had just hit all these schools for career progression, was fast tracking well. Like I said, I'd made E5 in roughly 2 years. I made staff sergeant for E6 in 4.5, 5 years, and was just on the ball to pick up my 7. Ended up getting medically retired instead. I was excited about it at first, probably like everybody is. And oh yeah, I get to, I'm about to have like 3 months of leave. I'm getting out. This is going to be great. And then it wasn't so great. That first 2 years out was the most miserable, depressing time of my life until I finally kind of got settled. Met, I guess it was last year sometime, met my current fiance now. I have a daughter that's 5 years old. Her name's Tennessee Bailey. About to have a stepdaughter, Kylie Ella. Me and Caitlin are having a little boy. This is going to be Ridge. Finally, I have a little boy now. But in the wake of all this, I got in. One of my buddies from Saluda, Kenny Gentry, called me. He was like, hey man, you need to come on this hunting trip. And I'm an avid hunter. Like, I hunt all the time, religiously. I was like, what's it all about? And he's like, well, we provide veterans on free hunting and fishing trips. And I was like, well, the heck with, just coming on the trip. Like, how do I get involved? Let's do this. And essentially became the assistant state lead at the time for the Fallen Outdoors. We're saying is living our dream because they gave up theirs. Essentially, it's all in the fight to fight, the 22 a day epidemic that we're seeing with veteran suicide and stuff like that. And it may not be the most fun thing to talk about, but it needs to be talked about.
Absolutely.
You need to bring it to the surface. Did a couple trips with them, full circle, come around, ended up becoming the state lead for the state of South Carolina. Took over that last year. It's been a work in progress trying to make progression. It's a 501c nonprofit, so everything that we do is strictly by donations, whether it's funds that people want to donate, or if it's landowners that say, hey, I got 500 acres, come down here and use our land. We have hunting insurance and stuff like that for liability reasons. The reason we do what we do is because of the results we see and we get from these trips.
Staff Sergeant, thank you so much for being here. Thanks so much for your service. In 2009, you deployed to Iraq, Baghdad. You were there for a couple months. You were getting settled in, knew the area of operations. You were ready to do your job out there. Something happened very quickly that changed everything for that deployment.
Absolutely, yeah. Our colonel I think we pulled everybody off mission that day and said, hey, we're going to have a meeting so-and-so times at the basketball courts back here, battalion formation. Roger, got it. Everybody showed up. We had heard rumors like, hey, we're going to Afghanistan, and it had been squashed previous weeks up to this. We didn't know what to expect. Sure enough, Colonel gets out there. Hey, boys, pack your stuff. We're going to southern Afghanistan, Kandahar. All right. We spent the next few weeks. I don't even think it was a few weeks. I can't remember because it was roughly 10 years ago now. But I'm pretty sure it was about 2 weeks that we packed everything we had in Connexes, put our Buffalo, RG-31s, like all of our trucks on C-17s and C-5s, and we flew it all straight to Kandahar, Afghanistan.
You're in this AO, it's a war zone,
right.
Don't get me wrong, but you're getting comfortable.
Yeah.
Did your comfort level change when you realized you were about to go somewhere completely different that Americans had never been before and you didn't know what the threat was anymore?
Yeah, so that was definitely interesting. When you get deployment orders, you got at least a year of training before that. We had even more coming out of Carson because we had multiple deployments canceled before that. You go out to NTC, to National Training Center in Fort Irwin, California, train up for this urban environment, like everything's brick built, like cement buildings and stuff like that. You're going to be in the city and all this, and then all of a sudden it's bam, all you got is sand mountain, rock mountains and dirt roads and shacks that, are made out of mud. We were not prepared for it. I'm all about a fight, so let's get it. But we were not prepared. You train for an urban environment and then you're in the Wild West.
Staff Sergeant, thanks so much for being here. Thank you so much for your service. In the span of your entire career in the United States Army as a combat engineer, you were blown up by IEDs over a dozen times. Driving down the road, route clearance, hanging out with your boys, looking out the window, that bomb goes off underneath you, things change. The switch goes on.
Right, there's multiple scenarios that can happen once you do get blown up. It can be, just a coward out there with an IED that's on a motorcycle with, attaching some wires to a motorcycle battery 1,000 meters away, and then he's hauling butt. Or it can be a scenario where you're in a mountain pass and the IED goes off that you weren't expecting. May have been there under the ground and sand's been covering it up with the wind for 2 months before anybody rolls down that route. And next thing you know, you're in a troops in contact with guys, trying to ambush you from the left or the right. Multiple scenarios can happen from there. It changes everything. It changes, like you say, you're sitting in there and you're just kind of BSing with your boys, and you might have some latest Drake CD on, playing through the speakers of your headsets, and everybody's just hanging out trying to look for the possible threat, and then boom, and it's react. Now what? Shoot, move, communicate. You try to make sure your guys are okay. That's the first thing that's happening. You're trying to get comms with the unit, your platoon sergeant in the back, letting them know you're okay. Unfortunately, the first thing that usually happens when you get hit is comms go red on the vehicle because it restarts itself. So everybody's really curious, and then you're looking for secondary or tertiary devices that they like to always hit you from one and then have another one set off to the side, so when they come up to do recovery, it catches somebody slipping. The devices themselves are not complicated to make or in place. It's how they emplace them with secondary, tertiaries. It really just all depends on what kind of way they're going to emplace this IED and try to hit you with it. Every
time you went out on patrol after getting hit a couple times, was there an overwhelming amount of fear in the vehicles?
Absolutely not. Dude, I'm telling you now, that's probably not the answer you're expecting, but I'm going to tell you now, when you get hit, yeah, it definitely sucks. Don't get me wrong, it always catches you surprise. But once you've been doing route clearance for a while, and your boy, like pretty much everybody in that convoy has been hit at one time by now, and it's just get hit, boom, oh, that sucked. Okay, everybody okay, clean it up, let's go, continue mission, and we're on to the next IED.
Staff Sergeant, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your service. In 2015, you were the hero of the game at Clemson versus Notre Dame in 2015. This isn't the first time you've been recognized for your outstanding service to this country. Thank you so much for it. Tell me what that experience was like out there with 85,000 fans in the pouring rain, getting recognized for your 2 Purple Hearts.
Yeah, man, it was good times. I reside here in Columbia now, but I'm definitely a diehard Clemson fan through and through.
We'll cut that part out.
Fair enough. I get invited. I don't know who nominated myself for this. Get invited by Clemson University's football team. I get a phone call, and I'm in Hawaii at the time, stationed there. And I remember the phone call. I was standing in 66 Engineer Company in this little trailer building. This girl called. She's like, "Hey, this is so-and-so with the Clemson University football team." And I was like, "Excuse me, what?"
You recruiting me? What's up?
Yeah, I'm down. Defensive end, let's go. No, she was like, "Somebody has put you in for the hero of the game for the Clemson Notre Dame football game." Asked my unit. They said, "Go ahead." They knew that, like, don't touch Brandon when it's time for, a Clemson football game. Get on a plane, fly down here, wake up the next morning. It's pouring rain. We're supposed to leave. College game day is there that day. So, we're leaving at like 5 or 6 in the morning, and it is pouring. To our surprise, this was the flood of 2015. Destroyed Columbia, the beautiful city of Columbia down here. Drove through that thing all the way there, flooding, roads closed. Get up there, absolutely soaked. But to get out there on that football field and stand on the football field for the first time at Clemson University, to get recognized in front of roughly, 83, 85,000 people, it was a sold-out game. Have a standing ovation when they read your story was an extremely humbling experience. To sit here and say that it didn't jerk some tears would be a lie.
Staff Sergeant, thanks so much for being here. Thank you so much for your service. The improvised explosive device, the IED, that was your job in Afghanistan and Iraq, was to find these things and destroy them. As veterans, we know better than most, these are a coward's weapon. They don't have to be there. Once the job is done, they can just leave. And they leave soldiers hurt. They leave us really, really messed up. Tell me what it's like knowing your job is to go out there and find these roadside bombs, these explosives.
I'm just going to kind of go through what help people understand what IED is. It's basically a bomb constructed and deployed in ways other than conventional military action. They're generally seen in heavy terrorist cells and or asymmetric unconventional warfare. People like to use them because you can emplace an IED, leave it, and as long as it's got battery to it or a power source, it's good to go until somebody runs over it or comes by it. As far as knowing that's your job is to go find it, does it suck? Absolutely. Is it rewarding? The reward outweighs the job. I've met many people like, "Oh God, I hate being a combat engineer. Like, it sucks. We were supposed to be like glorified infantry. We just ride around with infantry." As bad as route clearance sucks, and riding around looking for these IEDs and such, the reward of knowing that you are clearing the route of any disaster that could come for coalition forces. There's multiple countries that you're fighting with over there together, so you're clearing it for them. You're clearing it for friendly forces, for all your buddies. Almost more importantly than anything else is you're clearing the roads of hazardous devices for the civilian populace that are riding around in these vehicles that aren't made to withstand an IED. When one of our military trucks hits it, as long as you got your seatbelt on and you're strapped in tight, you can usually withstand whatever comes your way. If you're riding by it in a daggum Toyota Hilux, which is, their version of a 4Runner or, Tacoma, and you hit it, you're not going to find anything. And that's just the nature of the beast.
The United States military, we spend millions and millions and millions of dollars now on technology that helps us find these IEDs. Tell me about your experiences finding these things. From what I know, from what I've heard, these things are like made of junk. Like they put together with, we're talking a couple bucks putting these things together.
Right. Now, don't get me wrong. In Iraq, and I don't have all the experience in Iraq. I was only there for a few months before we moved over to Afghanistan. But in Iraq, what I've learned is, the threat in Iraq was not as much of an IED. It is an IED, but it was an EFP, which is an explosively formed projectile. Made them out of a copper plate, it's canted in, and when it shoots out with, the explosive behind it, it forms into a projectile that can basically come like Mach 3 speed through the side of your truck and incinerate everything inside of it. It's just a nasty device made by the Soleimani guy that we just killed in Iran, in Iraq, that was from Iran. He accounted for multiple casualties on the battlefield in Iraq over that time. Fast forward to Afghanistan, those IEDs over there, just as detrimental, because, what it takes to put, a pound or 2 pounds of explosive behind an EFP. Our Afghanistan, they just made HME, which is a homemade explosive, just a couple dollars worth of equipment and stuff that you literally find laying around any barn, and you can make a very nasty device to combat, for them to combat, us and other coalition forces on the battlefield.
Staff Sergeant, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for your service. We were talking earlier about the fallen outdoors. Veterans out here, we get a lot of therapy from hunting. And the way you were explaining it to me earlier, it was a little less about going out and killing something and a little bit more about just being out with your brothers.
Absolutely. I've said it many times. I can go out there. If I don't even see anything, I'll still have a good time with these guys. These guys literally could carry. Obviously, everybody likes to go out and try to harvest, a respectable animal. I could not tell you the handful of times that we've been out there and you didn't even see nothing. And these guys still left thoroughly happy that they got to come out and just be around people alike. I'm not saying that we're separate from the civilian populace out there or anything like that, but veterans love veterans. That's just the way it is. I can sit there and relate to another veteran. I did it for 10 years, so that's all I knew. For after I went to year of college, it was 10 years of military, and it's that sense of humor that you can't get somewhere else usually that sets yourself apart when you get around your buddies and you're like, man, I needed to be able to just talk some stuff with those guys and get it out of my system, and you know what? I'm good for the next 6 months now until the next trip comes along. That's just the way it goes.
The Fallen Outdoors has groups located in 39 states. If you'd like to learn more about what they do, you can visit them at fallen-outdoors.com, or you can follow them on Facebook and join any of their regional Facebook groups, including the Midwest, the Southern region, the West Coast, and the East Coast region. Staff Sergeant, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for your service. Veterans like yourself that have seen the things that you've seen and done the things that you've done, it's common for us to question our faith that we have held since we were kids. It's not a bad thing. It happens. But something happened in your life, a couple things happened in your life that brought you back to your faith in a much stronger way.
Exactly. The reason I want to talk about this is you go through all this traumatic events leading up to who you are today. You're out of the military now. You're lost. I know I was. I can only speak for myself right here. I got out of the military, seen some bad things, done some bad things, and you get out and you kind of question where you came from. I grew up down there in Saluda and grew up in Saluda Baptist Church, and went to church every Sunday and lived right around the corner from it, and got out and joined the military and just kind of got away from it and questioned a lot. And then hunting's therapy. Go out there to hunt to try to get a little therapy for myself or a snap on somebody. Sure enough, the night before, have a little tisk with my fiance, had just basically had like a breakdown from, just bottling up stuff inside from the deployments and whatnot. The last thing I said before bed, I said, man, I need to go back to church. Left it at that. I go out there, turkey hunting the next morning, last April, 55,000 acres of land roughly out there in Fort Jackson. Here comes a truck rolling down the road. I'm like, oh, great. Who's this out here? Dude pulls up and guy tells me, he's like, oh, you seen anything? Blah, blah, blah. We're just shooting, what? And the driver introduces himself. He's like, hey, I'm, Mike Fletcher. I'm a first sergeant out here on Fort Jackson. Okay, cool, got it. And then I'm like looking at this other guy. I'm like, oh man, this dude's got a sick fade. And I'm a barber. I'm like, this dude's got a sick fade. And like, he's got a mohawk. So he ain't in the military. Who is this dude? And like, who are you? And he's like, oh, I'm the pastor down there for Elevation Church on Senate Street. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, 6 hours ago, I'm saying I need to go back to church, and now I'm out here in the middle of the woods the next morning. First people I've ran into is a pastor from Elevation Church. And it goes along to having, not even in his truck, has a VIP pass for me to come to church. I fought it. I still fought it for quite some time. Met my buddy, Bobby Edwards, a Ranger first sergeant. He just stayed on to me. Like, come on, man. Come on. And I went through some more troubling times, and finally decided, I was like, man, I'm going to get down there and try it. We went to church, and one thing happened after another down there, and just the brotherhood and the way it all pieced itself together, and the way it's been in my life ever since, and the peace that I've gained through it is something I can't find anywhere else. I finally decided to quit trying to handle everything on my own, and it was time to give it to somebody else and see what they could do with it.
Staff Sergeant, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for your service. Last May, you took a job as the state lead for the Fallen Outdoors, a 501c3 nonprofit organization helping our veterans in South Carolina. Tell me all about the organization and what the Fallen Outdoors is doing.
I'm going to read a little bit of our mission statement real quick so you guys can understand. So we're an all-military, 100% nonprofit hunting and fishing organization. We're open to all branches and every service member, past or present. For us, in an effort to promote camaraderie while combating veteran suicide, we've established a network of military outdoorsmen and women across the nation, currently making up teams in about 39 different states right now. Teams work to secure hunting and fishing opportunities to open to the veteran community to experience the outdoors with fellow veterans like ourselves. This is achieved through work, with landowners, guides, outfitters, and regular civilians that just generally want to help us veterans out. By doing this, we can host and facilitate hunts to veterans and active service members alike. With that being said, I took over as the state lead back in roughly last May. Kind of slow to start. It's really good. I mean, it wasn't left in like a bad fashion or nothing like that. Took over, and I've got some good pro staff in place now and still taking on more. So if any of you guys are interested out there, everything is fully supported by veterans only as far as the staff goes. With that being said, when we get with landowners, or if I got buddies back home in Saluda, like, hey man, I've never been in, but I'd love to give back. You want to bring a guy or two down here and hunt this weekend? Absolutely. Sign it up and we'll go down there and make a trip out of it. The big thing for us right now is trying to get, those donations and stuff in place. That way we can get out of just hunting here locally. We can reach out and go up to Ohio or down to, Florida for an Osceola turkey hunt, or, go out to Texas. And I'd love to be able to get it with the capabilities to where we're not limiting ourselves to just the same trips over and over right here in town. I can say, hey, this year we're going on a 5-day hunt up to Ohio. You ain't got to pay for a thing, brother. You just show up and have your bags, and I'll pick you up on the way out, and we go up there with 3 or 4 guys and just all have a good time.
Thanks for joining us in our Soldier Salute, presented by Little Pig's Barbecue, serving Columbia since 1963 with that bodacious buffet. And Palmetto State Armory, American made for life. And Franklin Equipment, rent, buy, rely. And Atkins Law Firm Workers' Comp Attorneys. Who you hire matters.